In many ways, GW2 is different from other MMOs. Just because WoW did something 20 years ago, doesn't mean it still has to work the same way now. One of the things I love about this game is that the developers aren't afraid to try new things and innovate. But sometimes that does mean the game can be a bit confusing, especially if you're coming from a different MMO. Hey Lorenancy, how do I do a quest in GW2? So instead of quests, there are dynamic events, but there are also renown arts which are basically like quests, but you don't go to a quest giver. And there are also achievements called collections, and some of those are basically like a long storyline, which in later expansions they've started calling side stories and what the fuck? So yeah, I love GW2, but sometimes things can definitely get a little bit confusing. Fortunately for you, I've made it my personal mission to answer all common GW2 questions. And today, we're gonna clear up the most confusing things in GW2. So last week, I asked my Twitch chat what they thought were the most confusing things as a new player. Shout out to them. Thanks for literally doing my work for me. Let's get started. Airplane modes. You ever try to loot a chest and suddenly the game turns this weird color and your character is pretending to be an airplane? Gosh, I hate it when that happens. Fear not, just go back to the chest and press F again. What is going on here is that there's a gem store item you can put down to let other people go into this airplane mode. This was once an April Fool's joke, and then they put this item on a gem store so you can re-experience it. Unfortunately, people like to troll with these, so they'll put them like on chests, so you accidentally interact with the airplane thing instead of with the chest. So annoying. I really wish the developers would make it so that this airplane item has some type of confirmation dialogue. But now you know what this is, this shouldn't be as much of a problem. Quests. Let's answer that question from the intro. What is up with the quests in this game? There are no exclamation marks above anyone's heads. How to actually level up in the open worlds? When GW2 was first announced, a large part of the sales pitch was dynamic events. Instead of the game waiting for you to show up and accept a quest, things would just happen in the worlds, whether you would be there to see it or not. Dynamic events are awesome, but sometimes you will wander around and there's just nothing going on. To give players a sense of direction, there are also hard quests. These are kinda like your traditional MMO quests. You go to an area, fill up a bar by doing several objectives, and get rewarded once you complete it. Simple. You never even have to talk to a quest giver. However, a couple years into the game, the developers realized that it was kinda difficult to tell stories through just events and hearts. There just wasn't really a way to do a side quest with a cool story. But adding a quest log now seemed a bit old. A large part of the game's early marketing was all about how there weren't traditional quests. So instead, they decided to use the achievement panel. This is honestly one of the most confusing things in the game. There are some really high quality side quests with instances and voice acting, but they're just disguised as achievements. End of Dragons especially has some incredibly well written side quests, but I wouldn't blame you at all if you never even realized that they're there. They're just hidden in this ocean of achievements. Fortunately, in last year's expansion, they decided to put these side quest achievements into their own little side stories category. This means that people actually see them. I still wish that they would just make an obvious quest log for stuff like this, but at least it is a lot harder to miss them now. Next, let's talk about one of the ultimate confusing things in GW2. Crafting. Crafting in GW2 is actually pretty straightforward, but it usually confuses people a lot at the start. On the left, you have got a long list of recipes, and you can simply click them to craft them. If there are any components that you need to craft first, you can press this button and go to the right page to craft those first. Nice and straightforward. So what is so confusing about this? Well, just looking at this list, where are all the other weapons and armor? In GW2, you have to discover most crafting recipes. Only after that will they show up on your crafting list. this sounds more complicated than it actually is. You can discover recipes in this Discovery tab. Here you can combine items and the game will only let you combine stuff if it makes sense. Once you find a valid recipe, you press craft, get a bunch of bonus XP and unlock the recipe for later. Crafting weapons and armor usually follows a very simple pattern. There are usually two basic crafted components, and then there's usually an insignia for armor or an inscription for weapons. Once you know that pattern, it's actually very easy to find these recipes and you'll be a crafting pro in no time at all. Holy Trinity. In most MMOs there are tanks, healers and DPS. New players often ask me which class is which. Which of these are healers, tanks or DPS? GW2 Twitch has really freeform buildcraft, so the current reality is that every class can perform every role. But the roles in this game are a little different from what you may be used to from other MMOs. Back at launch, everybody basically played DPS. Everyone has got their own dedicated heal skill, and tanking wasn't really a thing, so we all just kinda healed ourselves. In open world and easy content, that is still kind of the case, but over the years we've also gotten a lot of harder content. In that content, we've actually started using healer builds. The interesting thing is that in GW2 Twitch, healers are usually also the tanks. In other MMOs, healers are often squishy and have to stay away from danger, but in GW2 Twitch, healers are usually very survivable and they can just heal themselves if they take damage. This makes them really good tanks, so if tanking is your thing, look for healing builds. Healing in GW2 Twitch is kinda different in general. Almost all healing is AoE healing, and there's not much targeted healing. There's no playing whack-a-mole with health bars in this game. This means that confusingly, in raids, the most safe place is usually not far away in the back. Instead, it is in melee range, right next to your healer. That is even true if you play a ranged build. This really confuses a lot of MMO players, and not everyone in the player base likes stacking together in melee range. But if you want to stay alive effortlessly, staying with the team is definitely the move. Besides healers, we also have so-called boon DPS builds. These are DPS builds that also bring a bit of support. If you want more details on this, I recommend checking out my raid guide from a couple years ago. I'm actually thinking of doing a general endgame guide soon, so keep an eye open for that. Materials are goals. A couple years ago, I did a video talking about the best gold farms in GW2 Twitch, and every once in a while I get a comment on that video saying, "Hey, I tried this farm, but I only get materials and weird currencies. I didn't actually get any gold. Where's my gold, Luranity?" Alright, calm down. Something that can be a bit confusing is that value in GW2 Twitch is not just how much gold you have. This might seem kinda obvious to some of you, but materials you get are also goals. If you don't want the materials you get, you can easily sell them on the trading post and turn them into gold. The trading post is absolutely essential for making gold in this game. It's actually pretty rare for GW2 Twitch to give you gold directly. Most content gives you materials, and it's easy to press the deposit button and never see them again. You may be sitting on lots of value without even realizing it, because you're just depositing materials instead of selling them. On GW2efficiency.com, you can go to the material storage page, and the website will calculate how much gold your materials are worth. You may be surprised at how much value you've accrued over there. If you're planning to use these materials to craft a legendary, for example, I recommend holding on to them. But if you need gold for something, don't be afraid to just sell some materials that you're sitting on. Currency hell. GW2 Twitch has a lot of currencies, and that can be very confusing. There is dungeon currency, fractal currency, the other fractal currency, the other fractal currency, the list goes on. A lot of these currencies can actually also be converted into gold. You may, for example, be able to spend your currency on items that you can sell. If you're interested, I did a whole video about that a couple years ago. But for now, if you ever get currency and you have no idea what it does, I highly recommend just looking it up on the wiki. The GW2 Twitch wiki is an absolutely fantastic resource, and it can tell you exactly what a currency can be used for. Next, let's talk about one that even veteran players are confused confused about. Condition versus power. GW2 2 has two different ways of dealing damage. First, there is power or strike damage, which is just your straightforward damage. There are also conditions that deal damage over time, like bleeding, burning, poison or torments. Power damage and condition damage usually doesn't combine into a build very well. Most weapons are pretty clearly geared at one type of damage. The Necromancer's Greatsword is clearly a power weapon, while the pistol is very clearly aimed at Condi. So be aware of what weapon you're using when you are picking your stats. Picking power damage stats while your weapon mostly does conditions is not gonna work well. Players often get confused about where power damage is good and where Condi damage is good. Usually the answer is both are fine. Unless if your enemies die really quickly. If the enemies die quickly, power tends to be much better, because Condi needs some time to stack up conditions. If the enemy dies before your bleed stacks are even up, it's difficult to contribute. There's a large misconception that conditions are better on bosses that move a lot, because the stacked Condis keep doing damage even while you are away from the boss. This isn't really true. When a boss goes out of your range, you won't be able to stack up new Condis either. You might keep doing damage for now, but in the future your damage will go down, just like for a power DPS. The reason for this misconception is mostly that a lot of really good range builds happen to be Condi builds, and range builds tend to be really good when the enemy moves a lot. It's more the ranged part that makes these builds good instead of the Condi part. In the end, you should just play whatever build you want, but if the mobs die quickly, power damage definitely has an advantage. Now let's go back to a more new player topic. Expansions and living walls. Up next is a series of questions I get asked literally every single stream. Do I need to buy all the expansions? There's so many of them. Can I just buy the newest one? Also, what the heck is living walls? I'll try to answer this one pretty quickly. In a lot of other MMOs, people mostly play the newest expansion. The old expansion zones are usually kinda dead, and the dungeons and raids there are not super relevant anymore. GW2 2 is different. The level cap for all expansions is the same, and old expansion content stays relevant even when a new expansion comes out. The first expansion, Heart of Thorns, is still one of the most actively played ones in open worlds. Path of Fire is still the expansion to get most mounts, and End of Dragons is still the expansion where people farm their shiny Aurene legendaries. Because of this, you shouldn't feel like you need to get all expansions at once. It's kinda like a board game. Play the game, see if you like it, and whenever you want more content to play, pick up an expansion that looks like fun. You can choose to play the expansions in release order for the story experience, but you can also just jump to any expansion you want. If you wanna do Secrets of the Obscure first to get your Sky skill, you can totally do that. And then there is also Living Walls. I'll make it quick. So, back in the day, Living Worlds was like seasons of story patches in between the expansions. The first season is free, but seasons 2, 3, 4 and 5 are all separate purchases. They're actually pretty awesome, especially season 4, but if you don't care about story that much, you can also totally jump into the expansions first and play the seasons later. I understand that getting all the seasons can be kind of a hard sell. If you do want the full story experience, I recommend checking out your story journal in the hero panel. Here you can see exactly where these seasons fit in chronologically. Oh hey, by the way, fun fact of the day. If you are thinking of picking up any GW2 expansions, you should know that I have an affiliate link. If you buy an expansion on GW2.com with my link, I get a little financial kickback, so you can support my content at no additional cost to you. The link is down in the description. Just be aware that expansions from GW2.com are not compatible with Steam or Epic accounts, so if that's you, you cannot use my link. Alright, that's enough shameless advertising. Let's get back to the video. Alt characters. Almost every day I will be streaming, and then somebody in the chat will ask me this. Why do you have so many characters? Do you actually play them all? Did you do story and map completion on every single character? Something you may also not be used to from other MMOs is that a lot of stuff in GW2 2 is account bound. There is some character bound progression, like leveling up, but for the most part GW2 2 players progress their account instead of progressing their characters. Gold, unlocks, mounts, achievements, legendaries. it's all account bound. While you can do map completion and story on all your characters, you really don't have to. All you gotta do to get an alt up and running is level it up, get some gear, and maybe grab a couple waypoints you care about. That's it. On most of my characters, I have never done a single story instance. There are plenty of players out there who don't even really have a main character. They just play whatever character they feel like that day. So don't be afraid to make some alts. It's a great way to play other classes or get some new fashion looks going. Training. You unlock different skills, traits and specializations in the Training tab. Here you spend hero points to unlock different parts of your class. I see a lot of new players get very stressed about deciding what to pick. What if you make the wrong choice? Can I refund these hero points somehow? It's important to understand that this panel just unlocks stuff. It doesn't actually decide your build, it just unlocks options for you. You can change your actual build anytime you are out of combat, but there are no refunds for what you choose to unlock with hero points. This isn't really a problem though. GW2 is designed in such a way that before long, you will just kinda unlock everything. There are no wrong choices, you're just deciding what to get first. The stuff you don't choose, you will just unlock later, so try not to stress about it. It is important to know that in the expansions, hero point challenges give you 10 hero points instead of just 1. So if you're struggling to unlock your elite specs, and if you're scouring every hero point you can find, just go to the expansions. What to do? Something which I think confuses a lot of new players is just, what do you actually do in this game? For the first couple hours, the answer is really straightforward. Get experience and get to max level. But after that, it can be difficult to know what to do. There's a lot of different expansions and different game modes to get into, and it can honestly be really overwhelming. After you hit level 80, there is still a decent amount of progression to do. You can unlock elite specializations, level up masteries, unlock flying mounts, complete the expansion stories. But after all of that is done, you kinda need to set your own goals in Guild Wars 2. Some people chase legendaries, others go for every achievement, or seek the thrill of raiding or PvP. There is a lot to do in this game, and you have to decide for yourself which thing to focus on. If you need help with this, I actually have a whole video on what you should and what you can do after level 80. The link to that video is in the description. And that brings us to the end of this very confusing video. I really hope it was helpful. I also kind of considered talking about confusing inventory stuff, but I've been writing a whole separate inventory video, so stay tuned for that one. If you have any questions, feel free to drop by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/Liranity. I stream GW2 5 nights a week and I am always down to chat. Also, definitely check out my Discord server. There's a ton of really friendly Guild Wars 2 players over there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.